Today I'll talk about my personal thoughts on sculpting in Blender versus sculpting in ZBrush. I want to talk a little about the difference between both of them, which one I prefer, and why I stopped using ZBrush. My thoughts will be as unbiased as they can be, and if you have been following my channel for a while, you will know that even though I have been sculpting characters mainly using Blender, I'm an advocate for artist before program or medium, and that the program in a general sense does not matter nearly as much. That is also to say that I'm not comparing both of these programs based on their brands and titles, but rather on what they offer. While I talk about all of that, I will sculpt Morgan Ainsland in the background using Blender. Okay, so let's jump right to it. As much as I love sculpting using Blender, I absolutely loved sculpting in ZBrush. You can definitely tell that that program is made primarily for sculpting, starting from its refined and immense selection of sculpting brushes to how well it handles high poly counts and many other different features from Dynamesh to ZRemesher, sculpting layers, etc. The viewport sculpting materials are by default made to make the sculpt look good. It also feels good to see your object getting sculpted right from the start. That is if you figure out how to navigate using ZBrush, because let's face it, it ain't your usual way of doing things. On the first look, it might seem that ZBrush is the obvious choice for sculpting. It is made for that exact purpose after all. So I completely understand why people might think it is the better choice and how seasoned ZBrush users will have a hard time giving sculpting in Blender a go. And even if they do, they might judge it a bit too fast. Blender actually does pretty darn well compared to all that I just mentioned, even if it might not seem so from the get-go. There aren't as many brushes as you would get in ZBrush, and some might require some tweaking to work as good. But in reality, and I believe most sculptors will agree with this, you will only use a handful of brushes at the end of the day. Also, even though Blender might not be able to handle quite as many poly count as ZBrush without some lag, it handles a lot more than one might think. You just need to understand how to use dynamic topology in Blender. This part will require a video on its own to explain, but the only thing you might not be able to handle is the hyper-realistic details like minuscule pores, which you can actually still do by painting the bump map instead of sculpting, and it will give you the results. The amount of poly count you actually need for 90% of the work out there can easily be done in Blender, and the other 10% has solutions. You just need a bit more knowledge with the program to get it done. Most artists will definitely fall in the 90% either way. Basically, ZBrush has many things that are nice to have, but you most likely won't need. That said, if I get to choose between two things where I simply get more with one, then my choice would be simple. In this case, it would be ZBrush. Things, however, are not that simple, which is why comparing both of these programs is a bit more complex. In reality, both of these programs are capable of getting any and every kind of sculpt done. Some parts of the sculpts might be faster using Blender, and others might be faster using ZBrush. Since both of these programs will get the job done, the next question is which will get it done faster and which is more fun to use. Both equally as important in my opinion. In addition to that, there are other factors to consider, such as the price of each program and the industry standard. But for now, let's put these last 2 points aside for a minute. I'll get back to it later in the video. Here's the thing, sculpting isn't just about the brushes and how high your poly count can be. When you get more advanced in digital sculpting, you will learn how to use many different tools to get the job done faster and more efficiently. An artist has to be flexible and learn how to use any tool to their advantage. The programs are only an extension to your hands. They are a bunch of tools that you can use in any way as you wish to get results. Let's start by talking about the speed and fun factor. First of all, navigation in Blender is definitely superior. Moving around your sculpt, getting to different menus, creating shortcuts, using shortcuts, it is just better. I tried looking online for tips on how to improve navigation in ZBrush, and even though I found ways to improve it, it didn't come close to how it works in Blender. This might sound trivial, but it will highly affect how fast you work, and as importantly, how fun your experience will be while sculpting. Navigating in ZBrush, specifically the viewport or how you move around your sculpt, can be very frustrating quite often, no matter how much I got used to it. Another thing to take into account is that Blender is a very powerful modeling tool. You can model things extremely fast and use them for your sculpts, whether it is to create basic shapes to sculpt on or create more detailed accessories, clothes, or anything else for your sculpt. In addition to that, you get to use modifiers to do an insane amount of things. An example is how I use the shrink wrap modifier in Blender on my sculpts to create a bunch of things that will stick to the form of my sculpts even if I modify the sculpt later on. I demonstrated this in a video I made of sculpting Tifa from Final Fantasy VII, the walkthrough edition, and it is also used in Morgan's sculpt here for various things. Sometimes the easiest and simplest things to do in Blender is actually quite a hassle to do in ZBrush. This could both be frustrating and slow down your work. The fact that Blender is an all-in-one program is actually a very powerful thing if used correctly to aid your sculpts. Sadly, many new sculptors will understandably not utilize this part of Blender when sculpting, which is why it is hard to quickly compare both without giving each program a fair amount of time and experience. Another part of sculpting in Blender that I largely prefer over ZBrush is rigging, posing, manual retopology, and some other areas that are more polished in Blender. ZBrush is capable of most of these things, but it is nowhere as good. You have to understand that ZBrush is meant for sculpting. That makes it superior in its own way. But whether intended or not, because Blender is a whole package, its other functions can be used to aid your sculpts in many ways that it makes it superior to ZBrush in some aspects. When you learn how to use these parts of Blender to help with your sculpts instead of seeing them as separate parts of your whole process, this is where you'll be able to utilize Blender's full sculpting potential. Putting all of these nitty details on the side, I can't stress this enough, but it all comes back to the artist at the end of the day and how they use their tools. The tool itself is not what creates your art. You can get the job done with either of these programs, only the process will differ in some aspects. I want to keep this simple, which is why I'm not getting too technical in all of the differences and what each program can do. But in my own experience, Blender has a bit of an oomph on the fun factor, speed, and creativity in how to use its tools to get the job done. ZBrush, on the other hand, has a bit of an oomph in things like its brushes, how nicely it works on your sculpt, how high you can go poly count wise, amongst other things. So at the end of the day, if you actually know how to use both programs effectively, I think it will go down to personal taste on which one you would prefer. If you want to take the comparison between both of these programs even further, there are other things to consider. Price and the industry are some examples. No question that when it comes to price, if that is an issue for you, then Blender is a free program, so it wins in that case. So now you might be thinking that if both programs are powerful sculpting programs, why go for the paid one? Well, for starters, ZBrush is the industry standard, for better or worse. This means that if you are looking for a job, many famous studios will most likely use ZBrush in their pipeline. If you wish to join them, then learning ZBrush is definitely something to consider. On the other hand, you might want to join a studio or a small team that are Blender focused, or free softwares only. In that case, you'll have an upper hand knowing how to sculpt in Blender instead. If you choose a different route such as freelancing or any other job where you don't have to follow someone's pipeline, then the choice of the program will be completely up to you. So whether you're going to choose to sculpt in Blender or ZBrush is all the same as long as you get the job done. With all that said, learning a new software for a new job is not as complicated as you might think, in most cases anyways. If you know how to sculpt, know your anatomy, likeness, all the artsy stuff, then you can easily learn a new program and apply all what you learned in a short amount of time. That is to say that even if you are a ZBrush user joining a Blender pipeline or the other way around, you can always learn the program at that time. People won't look to hire you primarily because of the program you use. There are many other important things that employers will generally look at first. In fact, I already covered that in a video I made on this channel. In the end, choose whichever program you prefer and give it a go, or try both. Hell, you can actually sculpt using both with a plugin called GOZ. I personally tried it and it worked pretty well. Only thing to look out for is because navigation and hotkeys are different with each program, there will always be a few seconds to minutes of adaptation time when you switch from one to another, which might slow you down a bit. Considering everything I said, let's talk about why I personally stopped my ZBrush license not long ago. It comes down to a few reasons: the fun and speed aspect, my audience, and time. One thing that really bothered me with ZBrush is how navigating in the 3D space worked, which is horrible. Both Blender and ZBrush have their own strengths and weaknesses, but that one was something that really hurt my experience. It ruined the fun of sculpting and slowed me down a bit. It wasn't a deal breaker per se, definitely not a reason to hate using the program or anything. I still loved and enjoyed using ZBrush, but it still was a factor that affected my decision on stopping the license. Speed was another factor, but I'm also aware that I'm a lot more familiar with Blender and how to use it to my advantage, so if I kept using ZBrush, this might or might not have been an issue. The third reason is both time and my audience, you guys. I only have so much time to create all the content I want for the channel. Between art advice, sculpts, virtual reality sculpts, and more things I would like to do in the channel, I have little time to create both ZBrush and Blender sculpts, especially considering the similarities in the subject here. So sticking to one with my current content and how much free time I have played its role. Of course, that is not to say I will never sculpt in ZBrush again. I did enjoy using it and will probably get back to it when I have more time on my hands. For now, I'll continue doing Blender sculpts, give art advice, get back to virtual reality sculpting, and introduce new content. I made this video also in response to the many questions I got from you guys on which I think is better. It might or might not be the answer you're looking for, but at the end of the day, they are both excellent choices, so don't stress too much on which one to use. In fact, whether you are new to sculpting or are already a seasoned ZBrush or Blender sculptor, I strongly suggest to give the other one a try to spice things up. It could make things fun for you and you might learn a few things here and there that you can use to apply to your work. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, learned a thing or two. Leave a comment below on which one you prefer, Blender or ZBrush, and why. Give this video a like and share it with your friends, it really helps the channel. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for more fun and educational art videos. I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more awesome character sculpts and art related videos. You can also check out my store for full courses on character sculpting, texturing, materials, brushes, and more. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, then you will definitely enjoy the next one.